known around the world of hockey for a couple of things, even to this day. One of them still lives on. Does anybody know the name of the Japanese hockey player that was drafted by Buffalo? No? I guess. Nobody remembers Taro Tujimoto? Greg does, anyway. That's one. Thanks, Greg. In training camp one year, or after training camp, I'm sorry, or during the amateur draft, we had a draft and do a phone draft to pick players instead of meeting in a room like this with all the teams. So it was, I won't go into why, but it was an arcane reason. When it came time for Buffalo to draft late in the rounds, General Manager Punch Imlach was very disgusted by having to wait for this phone thing to go through all the time. So he said, why don't we draft somebody that doesn't exist and give them a good name, and then they have to repeat the name to all the other coaches when they go around again. So I decided that it would be fun to have a Japanese hockey player. There used to be a Japanese garden store in Elma, New York with the name Tujimoto. It was on Route 16. And I said, that's a good last name, and Taro would be a good first name. And so we drafted Taro Tujimoto, and instantly I made up this persona with a height, a weight, goals, assists, played for the Tokyo Katanas, you know. And so every time so we drafted him, and of course we had to spell the name to the Clarence Campbell, who ironically was a member of the prosecution team as Justice Jackson was in Nuremberg. Clarence Campbell was the president of the NHL at the time, Canadian lawyer from Montreal, and very stuffy guy. And he had to get, so we spelled the name over the phone to him. That's T-A-R-O-T-S-U-J-I-M-O-T-O. Could you repeat that, Mr. Imlach? T-A-R-O, you know. So then he had to give it, I think there was 20 teams in the league then. He had to repeat that to each one of the 20 teams over the phone. So he was drafted. Taro was drafted. And we never even told the owners, Seymour and Norty Knox, that there was no such person as Taro Tujimoto. And in fact, we set it up with the trainers so that in training camp that year, I set it up actually. I'd like to spread the wealth here, but I didn't. And we had a stall for him. He was in the training camp guide. We got equipment hanging for him and everything, you know. So the owners said, is he coming to training camp or not? We said, well, I don't know. Maybe he'll show up. Of course, he didn't show up, but we were in St. Catharines, Ontario, up the road in Buffalo, and we were staying at a Holiday Inn. The whole team was staying there, and Seymour was having lunch with his brother Norty in the coffee shop, and there happened to be a fella in there. I assume he was Canadian, but he was definitely Japanese. And when I had this brilliant idea when he watched him very closely, and when he got up to leave, pay his bill, I had Taro Tujimoto paged from the front desk. And you should have seen those Knoxes go out the door after him. And this poor guy, he didn't know what was from any place. Well, I was, myself and Floyd Smith, who was coaching Buffalo at the time, who was in on the gag, we were laughing so hard we practically were rolling on the floor because they thought they had found Taro Tujimoto. That's the kind of nonsense I involved myself in. I used to pull April Fool's jokes, and I did, one year I know you're getting a lot of sports out of this, by the way, but I realize all about the jokes. So I used to send out these fake news releases every April 1st, and that's not uncommon, particularly in Europe in the media. Many of you might know that. But we would send out a release, and one of my favorites was the year that you always take a kernel of reality when you work in this business, PR business, if you're going to do a joke. So they were putting in a brand new ice surface, taking all the piping in Memorial Auditorium, the old place where the Sabres play. So I thought that was interesting. So we can work this out. So I sent out a release announcing that we were going to be the first team in NHL history and pro hockey history to skate on plastic ice. They're going to put it. Maybe some of you have been in a mall or something where they have like a little exhibition. Actually, there is a couple of products that are like plastic ice. They try and skate on them. Seriously, I'm not kidding. But my ice was called Slider X. So we sent out a release, and I had it invented by a guy named. Oh no, I'm drawing that. Ramsay MacDonald, actually former Prime Minister in Great Britain, but Um, in his cow barn in Pictou County, Nova Scotia. That's where he came up with the chemical formula for the plastic ice. I always put, 3 or 4 paragraphs in, I put some silly thing in there so I wouldn't catch the media. Well, guess what? I did. I caught the New York Times. I caught a CBS station in Philadelphia. And most importantly, I caught poor Mr. Campbell, who was the president of the league, was sitting in his office in Montreal, and he got a phone call from the Canadian Press, which is like the Associated Press in Canada, asking him for a comment on the fact that Buffalo was going to play next year on a new surface on plastic ice. Well, Mr. Campbell harumphed a few times and said, and I almost remember the quote that they read to me over the phone, well, of course, we've always been in the forefront of innovation in the National Hockey League. While I'm not exactly knowledgeable of this particular product, I'm sure that the Buffalo franchise knows what it's doing. And, now, I don't want to embarrass somebody like that. He was a nice man. So, Canadian Press called me and I said, don't use the quote. I said, that's not fair. I mean, you just caught him, he might have been busier now or whatever. He just was giving you sort of a stock answer, So they didn't, but they read me the quote. But I did catch a few other people, and including someone who many of you will know when I tell you his name. He was a sports director and still emeritus now at Channel 2, Ed Kilgore. And the release on Slide Directs was for Saturday morning, April 1st, whatever the year was, I don't remember the year. And it said for release at 7 a.m., April 1st, whatever. Friday night comes, sports come on Channel 2 at 6:15, 6:20. Ed Kilgore leads his sportscast with something Channel 2 News has exclusively learned, that the Sabres will be playing on plastic ice next year. Well, I'm sitting at home, because I used to monitor the sportscast because I was a PR guy. Now I start to laugh. My wife is, what's the matter? The tears were rolling down that thing, I was laughing so hard. So I composed myself after he went off the air, and I hit his private number. And I called his private number, and I said, Ed, this is Paul Wieland. And he said, yeah, Paul, what? And I said, I'm really mad at you. And he said, why? I said, you broke my release date. That's not supposed to be out until tomorrow morning. He's still not sure whether he got taken. No, he is sure he got taken. It was, it was my favorite moment, actually.